So then, once again, welcome. The idea with the stickers was choose one sticker that you like and give it to your neighbor, introduce yourself, get on LinkedIn, whatever you want. Yeah, welcome to Being Agile in Construction. This is an interesting topic because we're not talking about code, continuous integration, we're talking about heavy stuff, right? We're talking about real stuff, digging holes in the ground. And maybe just some thoughts of you, what do you think? What are your first things that you, when you came in here, that you think, this is not gonna work, LeSS can't work in construction? Give me some ideas. It's cool? Okay, that's nice.
I was like, yay, finally.
Very good. I love that. Cool. Then, I think this is our time to get started. We're going to get with a short introduction so that you know the magnitude of the project. It's a lot of money and it's a lot of engines, a lot of tech stuff, and Thorben is the one to explain everything to you. And then we will jump and dive into how we started our Agile Construction Model and how we also were inspired by LeSS, very much inspired by LeSS, I have to say so. We want to talk about the challenges too, of course, since we heard Buzz talk about every single one of them, we'll repeat them, and it's fine. So talk about the challenges, and then we have a demo where we want to talk about and show you actually our backlog, our refinement board, also our review board, so real stuff to see, and then Q&A for you guys. Nice. Yeah, my name is Jorn Hendrik. I'm an Agile coach, podcast, entrepreneur, artist in agility. You can see the stickers already talk a bit about that. I love doing nice stuff. And yeah, I'm, so to say, the architect and Agile coach for the working model, and happy to share my experience.
Yeah, welcome. Welcome also from my side. Thorben Müller, I'm the project manager for the Civil and Lines project on the SuedOstLink. What all this means, I get to it in a minute. So engineer by education and a little bit of business on top of that. And here it says I'm the initiator and the servant leader of the Agile Construction Model, and that I think it's somewhat right, because at a particular point in time we had the situation that we were, on the one hand we had some frictions with partners in the project, and we had a reorganization, so I had to merge two teams actually, and we were heading into a new phase of the project for execution planning. So we had big tasks ahead of us, and so at that particular point in time, I had to decide, okay, we have to figure out how to work together, how to structure the organization, how to actually get the work done in the next 1.5 years. So yeah, that's us.
And since the photos are very German and serious, we thought let's put some more love to it. So
that's also us.
I'm more the guy growing my microgreens and salad. This is my pak choi. I really enjoy cooking and doing this. And
I keep it German serious, with some bike riding and bike races that you can see here.
But also in Spain, huh?
Also in Spain, yeah. But that's more for training, because Spain is not for bike riding. I'm quoting Geraint Thomas here, don't get me wrong. Good.
I would love to go to Mallorca. I was actually trapped once in Mallorca at Banyal del Far when like 2 hours of bikers were riding across me. Interesting.
Yeah. So that's us. We will talk you through the organization first. So what or who is 50 Hertz? 50 Hertz is one of the 4 transmission system operators for electricity in Germany. So the Spain equivalent would be Red Electrica, the France or French equivalent would be RTE. So we are responsible for, as we say, keeping the lights on. So always to keep the electricity grid in balance, so that you don't need to worry where the electricity comes from. You can just switch your lights on and be happy about it. So we are in the background making sure that this still happens in the next years. So just some rough figures, closing in on 2,000 people in the organization. In our grid area, 18 million customers connected to the grid, not to our grid, but the area that we serve. Our aim is to have the ability in the grid to take up 100% of renewable energies by 2032. There's a little bit of way to go. I think at the moment we are in the highest days. We are somewhere between 70, 75, 80%. So we still have a bit way ahead of us. The project we're talking about today is the SuedOstLink, one of the largest infrastructure projects in Germany. It's basically a big power line between the northeast of Germany and the south. So we have in the northeast, we have a lot of renewable energy generation, so a lot of wind, a lot of solar, and a lot of offshore wind coming in. And in the south, we have big consumption with big factories, big cities. So we need to link those. We need to link those areas. And my team is responsible for actually building the electrical asset on the line. Yeah? So cables, civil works, overhead lines. I will show you some pictures in a second. And to give you some indication what we're talking about somewhere around 40 people in my team, plus at the moment 3 external partners, 3 construction teams. My project volume alone is 3 billion. The entire SuedOstLink has roughly a budget of 4.5, and we're part of a larger organization where we build several of those links, where we talk about 10 billion plus of investment volume for 50 hertz alone. We are responsible for roughly half of the line, so this is our part, that's half. So the total line is 540 kilometers, so we're approximately responsible for half of that.
One thing that I find so interesting is like when there's wind in the north, and then we have some need for energy consumption in the south, it will be immediately there, right?
Yes, it will be immediately there, and that's the challenge of the electrical grid, always to have generation and consumption in balance. As you may heard from the news, there are still some technical challenges to solve in order to be able to store electricity on huge quantities. Yeah, we're still not there. There are some technologies available, water, batteries, you name it. But at the moment, the concept is still consumption equals generation and immediate consumption of generated power. Yeah.
And why is it so expensive? That was my second question.
Because
like
it's
billions. Why?
This is why, particularly, or as an example, there is a lot of construction involved. There's a lot of assets involved. There's a lot of material involved. And of course, yes, manpower, but manpower is really the least one. So here's some impressions. Here you can see actually a prototype site that we built. So that is a to-scale construction site. It's called a joint base. So basically what we do is we take 2 of those cables and connect them together in those containers. Yeah? There are 4 cables to connect. And just to give you an understanding, so these are real people here. Yeah? This is not Lego or something else. These are real people. These are real cars, real containers. So to give you an understanding about the size of the construction site, so we're talking about 150 by 70 meters here, roughly. And we have 154 of them along the route, on our half of the route. So that explains why this is, there's rather big money going into these projects. And on the left side, you see one of our planning events. Yeah, this is on site in the site office. It happens every month. It's a strategic operations planning, or the strategic construction planning that takes place. Yeah, so that's a little bit of the background about the project, the size, what we're talking about. And now we hit the ground running when it comes to Agile. So why Agile in construction at all? Why have we opted in for that? Because of the size of the task, of the timeline, and of the task that we were facing. When we look at the project and the scale, I talked about the 40 people in my team, but that's not everyone. Yeah? So we have As you can see here, the project is divided in 3 sections, and we have in each section there is execution planner responsible for this part of the route, which is somewhere between 80 and 90 kilometers. And we have a cable system delivery partner with NKT, who is responsible for their part of the planning, so for their particular scope. In total, together with my team and all the partners involved, during the execution planning phase, we were talking about 200 plus people that we had to coordinate, that we had to organize. We haven't done this before, yeah? Neither 50 Hertz as an organization, nor the partners that are involved in the project. And because of squeeze in the time schedule, we had to parallelize a lot of tasks. Yeah? So as you may have experience in the project, so one part of the schedule is moving to the right, the other one remains fixed, so there is less time to do the same amount of tasks. So we had the challenge to incorporate that. So there was a lot of multitasking, a lot of interdependent tasks going on at the same time, requiring a lot of coordination and a lot of organization. Timeline was tight from the beginning, so we had 1.5 years to bring together all the partners and to basically launch the product. The product for us was big tenders, big civil works tenders that we had to bring to the market. And that was just 1.5 years for execution planning, building the documents for the tenders and going out to the market. So we had not that much time to build working relationships, effective working relationships, and we had to overcome some barriers that are prone to our industry that I will talk a little bit later. And the nature of the task, what do I mean with that? During the planning phase of such a project, it's pretty much normal that you identify new information every day. Yeah? So while you progress your planning, information will bubble up to the surface. New information will come from the parallel running task like soil condition surveys or other things going on. So new information are coming into the teams, which need to be incorporated into the execution planning. So the teams had to adopt very fast as they progressed through the execution planning. So that's why we had to opt for Agile. And Jorn, how did we do that?
Yes, and just let's stop a moment. So a lot of information, I know. A lot of money, a lot of specs, whatever. But now imagine you're in my place, Thorben calls you and asks, how can we go Agile? Which I find very cool, by the way, because he's like, okay, this is so expensive, this is so important, this is run by governmental even, we need to do it Agile because we didn't do it before. I think that's a very, very cool approach. What would be your first step? What do you think? What? Run. Yeah, good point. Yeah. Oh, yeah, perfect. Nice. Nice. Just to repeat a bit for the recording, so one backlog, getting teams together, harmonize it, having one vision, right? Amazing. That's our roadmap, okay.
Here we go.
Let's go into it. The very first thing was actually to have some sort of Agile workshop. It actually was a team building, right? Because NKT, the cable producer, and 50 Hertz, there were some struggles, right? So the first thing was to kind of embrace it and come together, and we did a Lego Serious Play workshop, by the way, to really go into agile principles like risk reduction, transparency. What does it mean? What does it mean for all of the different teams, right? Different teams in Thorben's area, the teams in the cable producer. So that was the very first start. And with that, we had a to-do list, like a backlog already from our coaching and change perspective to go into what we called practice sprints. So yes, we could have go from the get-go with CLP, Certified LeSS Practitioner workshops or trainings and educate everyone, but we were so far away from this with the engineers that we thought, no, let's just do it. Let's just make sprints. Let's just divide the teams into four teams, right? We just threw them together, and also by design cross-functional, and let's sprint, right? And it was all crap, right? The backlog was crap. The goals were somewhere in the air. It was just for getting to know and coming together in a daily, right? That was an important step. And actually, it hurt a lot, but actually there was a lot of curiosity. So we went then through an analysis phase where we said, okay, this is great. Let's come to a conclusion to have one backlog, to have clear cross-functional teams, to dive deeper into this agility process. And at this point, you can already see we had definitely Scrum at first hand. So if you can't Scrum, you can't scale, right? And then LeSS principles were already at hand because we had to go scale from the beginning, right? Because of the size. The model development then that we will talk about, next slide, was definitely an important task to give a structure that leads to something that we can see. And then we had the sprint kickoff with the initial planning of the team leads, POs, right? And then you as a PO at that point. And up until now, we are at sprint 13, I think? No,
16.
16, yeah. And with results like...
It's still running good. And maybe to add a little bit here, I talked about 4 partners before. So 1 execution planning partner in each section plus NKT as an entire organization. So we did this with the cable supply partner, and we did this already at this point in time. We had the buy-in from all the partners involved in the project. And I think without that wouldn't have been possible. Because it was key really to get to get at least the idea across to all partners involved, so that they further support it in their teams, that they further support the, let's say, uncommon way of organization and of collaboration in those projects. And we were lucky enough to have those, to have the trust and the will of those guys, of the management of the partners to actually test and to try out this sort of new form of collaboration in those projects. And with the sprint kickoff, we have to add that we were not ready. We were not ready by mapping out the entire working model, by having everything polished and finished. You mentioned the one backlog in the beginning. We were not 100% there, that we were, able to say, well, here you have it, it's all cleared, it's all mapped out. That was not the case. We just had the situation that at some point in time we just started and we just kicked it off and we adopted it along the way. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So just to give you a brief overview, we designed this working model in a way that it is basically Scrum. We have the Scrum values at hand, we have the roles from Scrum at hand, we have the artifacts of Scrum at hand, all the events, and this is where LeSS kicked in because we from the get-go designed multi-team sprint refinements, multi-team sprint plannings, reviews with everyone, and also overall retrospectives. And this was super important because we had to. Right? There was a lot of dual fix meeting going on where people were kind of structured themselves in some sort of overall meetings, but then others were left out. So this idea of, and that was nice because the teams, the feature teams that we created, they were cross-functional from the get-go. So they had to implement the people from the cable situation, people from the wire situation. So it was cross-functional. And it was interesting because of the size of the project, because the problem is you can't dig, 60 construction site grounds. With one company, there's not enough people. You have to do it with 3, right?
Yeah.
So that's the idea of splitting it into 3 parts, which I always challenged, but that was the way that we started, right? And I think what is super important on the workflow side, this is where we baked in the large-scale Scrum ideas, right? So it was the idea on workflows, how do we, it was less principles. It is then the CLPs that Robert helped us actually doing, right? So we educated everyone with a certified LeSS practitioner, also our partners, but we come to that in a second, right?
Yeah.
And just to go directly into LeSS principles, I think system modeling in our overall retrospectives, for example, was super helpful because we got all of the people in one room, just like Bas, you said now in your talk. And this one was about knowledge transfer, right? Business transfer. So it was the idea of when we proceed digging the grounds at the first step, how do we educate the other teams what comes up, right? And just to give you an idea of how complex this is, we have archaeologists in the team who are responsible to get the gold coins of the Romans at hand, which we pray that
hopefully not,
because then everything will stop. So, and this is an interesting part, right, where we had overall retrospectives with system modeling, system thinking at hand, right? Another point, of course, right, this is the selfie from our CLPs with Robert at this point. So we started, and maybe you say 2 or 3 words.
Maybe one interesting learning from this, and Bas, bear with me. There was an education phase that you had in your speech today. We deliberately cancelled that, at least for the entire team. Why did we do that? Because the team in the beginning were so far off with their knowledge about agile work. You simply couldn't build on anything because it's just not existent in the industry. So we had to, or we approached it in a little bit different way. We also, of course, we used the vocabulary, but we tried to convince the teams and explain what we do and why we do it, and then let them work with it and let them experience the working model by themselves. Of course, we had heavy support from Jörn Hendrik, from 3 other agile coaches during that time, but we didn't start off with a big training block where we basically pushed everyone through. So we did this roughly half a year after we started. So this picture is from November. We started in May. This picture is from November. But then we pushed everyone through the LeSS practitioner training, and the perception was really good actually. And afterwards they came to us and say, yeah, this is the right moment, because when we would have had this in the beginning, we had no clue what Robert was talking about. Yeah, but now, after half a year of work in this, they were able to connect the dots and really to get something out of the training when it comes to their daily life of work, because they were able to connect the training content to the things that we do every day.
And that's an interesting part, right? Just for LeSS adoption, or inspired by LeSS, I'd say, right? Be very careful with the idea of implementing it in that field, but there are no dysfunctionalities that you see in development teams, right? Because they are not development teams. So you don't have this talk about silos in certain areas, because they're engineers, right? They had their own silos, and we will come to that exactly in the next slide. The challenges of the PMO, for example, right? The idea of matrix organizations, they are dysfunctionalities just like the same as every other big corporate things, to be intelligently complex, which is a dysfunctionality, as we all know. But that was an interesting part, right? So we could build up on that and then educate really with a clear mind. That was really, really beautiful. And what we want, the one thing that we did was an open hour. Every week, Tuesday from 1:30 to 2:30, there was an open hour. We call it Agile Open Hour. And then we just talked about several things of the 5 steps and dimensions of the working model, about values, about the roles, about multi-team events. And at some point we had 60 people in that call, right? And from everywhere. It was just shared with the whole organization.
Was it all shiny? Was it all bright? Of course not. Yeah? So let's talk a little bit about the challenges. We Deep dive into the two on the right side. We will deep dive there, but let me talk about the ones on the left. Industry culture. The construction industry or the technical industry or the OEM industry, however you want to call it, is very used to have finite contracts, finite scope descriptions. Yeah, you have to describe, if you want to buy something from me, you have to describe exactly what I have to do, when I have to do it, and until to whom I'm handing over. So basically that's the mindset of the industry, that's the mindset of the people working in the industry, and we fostered that for decades. So that was tough to unlearn. So to come into play with a collaborative mindset, with a collaboration setup was from some perceived very with a very high distance. So the second one I want to talk about is that we had already contracts in place with our partners. I mean, when we started this, some of those contracts were already in existence for years. So when we drafted those contracts, when someone sat down and said, okay, what do I want to have for this project, no one ever imagined that we would do parts of this contract in a collaborative, agile approach or in an agile way. So it was nowhere to be found in this contract. So we couldn't force it by just saying, well, you signed this, yeah, so you have to work like this. It was not possible. So what have we done? We needed to build up trust. I said in the beginning, we had the management of all our partners on board. We had to explain with them or discuss with them. We had to build up trust with the partners, with the organization of the partners, that this is actually the right way forward for everyone, for the purpose of the entire project, but also for each and every individual organization by itself. Now we look a little bit into agile boundaries and rapid scaling. What about agile boundaries?
Yeah, the end foe, the enemy, right? All of the ideas of how to integrate in planning organizations, the PMO. And I mean, the problem was that we couldn't change this, right? That was throughout the whole organization. So what we did was a bit of a trick. And there again, the inspiration of LeSS really helped, because and since we moved forward and we had the sprints and we had the teams and we had one backlog and we had our multi-team events, the teams, they came together and then they said, we always have this push from the PMO that we need to align, that we need to coordinate in risk management, budget management, contract management, quality management, document management. But then we just integrated them. We said, okay, you want to do this? Come to our multi-team refinements, come to our plannings, come to the review. And then what we did also, and this is the inspiration from LeSS, scouts. I mean, of course, in a complete different way as LeSS was meant to do it. But we then said, okay, we have the colleagues from the dedicated disciplines of the PMO, they are our scouts, because, and in a sense it is true, right? Because they are horizontal, I'd say, standards that should help the whole organization. Of course, the matrix organization itself is dysfunctional, as I would say, and harms the feature teams to work as cross-functional teams, right? But with this idea, this hack, so to say, we integrated them and we invited them. So we were not fighting against them, we just embraced them. And in the teams, we had the buddies who were then responsible to talk to them. Basically, we just said, please talk. Please get in one room and talk. When you want to have do this planning, then interact, right? And what then also arose were communities, right? The idea of, okay, we need to have an overall understanding for documents, right? In this planning organization that 50Hertz is, documents play an important role. If you onboard someone on construction ground, there would be an upload of 120 different documents that need to be aligned, right? And then they figured out the specs of doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one other thing that we already touched a little bit upon, so I won't dig into it too deep into this, was rapid scaling, or the requirement of scaling right from the beginning. So we did not have the chance to, let's say, start with one Scrum team, then maybe at the second one, maybe at the third one, and then think about scaling in a different way, but we had to do this from the get-go. Yeah? From the start, we had 200 plus people, we had to scale from the beginning without the chance to easily going into this. But we had the luck that engineers are just curious by design. I mean, if you imagine the engineering discipline as such, when you think back 120, 150 years, so first steam engines, first automotives, and so on, these guys were prototypers. Yeah? They built prototypes, they tested, they threw it away, they built new. So engineers are just curious by means of their discipline. And that was our luck. Yeah? So we had the majority of the team was just curious enough to test this out, to try this, and to try out new things. And I'm very, very happy that this happened, because otherwise we would not have been able to scale right from the beginning. So we had enough. So the critical mass of the team was big enough. Yeah? The critical mass of supporters was big enough to create a pull effect for all the others. Yeah? That was one
and I have to say,
big luck that
as a comparison for developers, software developers, we never dealt with this sort of cynicism that you find with them, right? So they were annoyed. It's like, why do we have to write down everything so that everybody can understand it in one backlog? Why can't I have my own backlog, right? Yeah. Why can't we split it? Why can't we, make local optimization? That was what they always were striving for. And we forced them back into one overview, one backlog. And this is, I think, a huge step. And then, I mean, actually, I can't believe it. It's like they just did it, and they tried it out. And yeah, that's why we came up with this analysis of, hey, it's engineers. They just want to do things, right? Yeah, just a short lean in into what we learned from LeSS principles. And we could go on even more, but I think the most important one is LeSS principle 1, large scale Scrum is Scrum. So we started with Scrum. We started with the core principles, even all values of Scrum and the roles, and implemented it, right? Yes, the one product owner rule was not, we were not able to really implement it, right? And certain things are definitely open to debate, but still the practice of sprints were crucial to understand where we were heading, right? So when you want to think about how could you kind of be more agile in an organization that's not in software development, I think giving them the tools at hand to first start up with Scrum is a good point, right? Transparency. The challenge was to build trust across the teams, right? So we had these different vendors, we had the different situations on that, and trust was the most valuable one. So this was done through multi-team events, this was done through, hey, I'm here, I have also the problems that you were talking about, and then sometimes they were standing like this and eyeing each other and saying, I'm mean, I don't want to talk to you. It's like, but we're in the same room, so okay, let's grab a Post-it. And it was really funny sometimes. It was like they just started to collaborate. So that was really one thing that was super important. And then, for lean thinking, I think you can say something.
Yes, lean thinking, we experienced with the topic of meetings or of events, because in the beginning the additional agile events were of course perceived as more work. Yeah? So it was tough in the beginning to explain, okay, please, if you like, get rid of your Jew fixes, get rid of your standard agenda, just lean into the agile events and see where this brings us. And they did it, and meanwhile the teams have an approach to meetings where they really deliberately decide whether this meeting is relevant or not, whether we need it or not, and who needs to be part of it. And this lean thinking now helps us tremendously, because we are at the verge at the moment from moving from the planning phase into the construction phase. So some, as you could see, so some parts are already being constructed on the line, but the majority of work will start next year. And now this learning from the planning phase in terms of lean thinking now helps us really to create effective events for the construction phase. And if you want to dig deeper into that, the mindset and the framework that we are now looking into is called lean construction. So if you want to dig deeper, that's a good place to look. Great.
Let's take a look.
Let's have a look.
Yeah.
First look, backlog. One backlog you can see up here. So these are the sprint backlogs for the delivery teams. This is the overall backlog in our system for all three sections. I jumped into one of the sprint backlogs here. You see the user stories, or because we are engineers, we call them work packages. I'm sorry. But we have an epic structure which basically contains, so to say, large headlines of planning content that we need to deliver for the tenders, and and then the work packages, and then you see here a detail of the user story with the 7 steps of the user story. You have here in the bottom you have different work steps that we need to fulfill the user story, and that all happens basically in one place. And now we have a look at some of our resources. We start with the knowledge resource for the construction model itself. So this you already know with the 5 pillars. So for each pillar we developed a certain or an own knowledge source. Here we have, for example, the role description for the roles that we have. Maybe we can go further into the event on the artifact structure. Here you what I just mentioned. So here you can see the artifact structure with the epics, with the work package and the work steps. And I think, the planning structure, the event structure from planning 1 to 3. Here you can see our review board. That's the review from the sprint 15. So here we have the feedbacks, and if we scroll a bit over it, you can see here are the deliverables from that particular sprint from each of the delivery teams. Here you see construction grounds, piling up cable protection pipes, and and maybe last but not least, we can also have a look at our backlog refinement. So where we do our multi-team backlog refinement. Here we have some details, as Jorn already mentioned, it's all about documents. It's all about planning documents in these kind of projects. So here we discuss multi-team, across teams, how we deal with certain technical plannings and what kind of standards we want to introduce. So that's a quick demo. Let's talk a little bit about what we've learned. I mean, was it all, as I said, was it all shiny? Was it all bright? Not every time, not everywhere, but here you can find some of the feedbacks we got from our partners, so please read it yourself. We hear a lot about transparency, we hear a lot about time restrictions and how we manage to really cope with this. I find this particularly interesting because that comes from one guy who had decades of, or has decades of experience in those kind of construction projects, and he said when he looked at the beginning on the task at hand, when they started, he thought, okay, this is 3 years, easily. But we did it in 1.5. So that was really an eye-opener also to him. So here we hear a lot about collaboration improved, planning process improved, cooperation improved. So that's the feedback that we have.
Is that 3 years to 1.5 years an unusual case in that industry?
The topic usual in this case is a bit complicated because these kind of projects were never done before. So it's a first of its kind. So it was just his let's say his expert experience. When he looked at it and he looked at the project and he looked at the task at hand, he just had a gut feeling of, okay, if I map out a timeline, I would probably map out a timeline of 3 years. But we only had 1.5. Yeah.
And most importantly, the construction ground started 3 months earlier than planned, right? So
yeah, we were a bit early on that.
Yeah.
Of course.
Just 2 slides and then we come to the question.
Huge thanks to our teams. We would not be here and stand here and talking to you without them. So although they are not here, big thanks, big shout out to all the teams that were involved, to all the partners that are involved in that project. Thank you very much. Without them, this would not have been possible.
Yes, and if you want to connect with us, of course, do it. I made some fresh QR codes for you, and I even wrote a blog post on it until 2 o'clock in the morning for you, so grab it.
So connect with
Like it,
us,
share
we're happy,
it.
and now we're happy to hear your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Here you go. Okay.
Oh, nice.
Here you go. Ah. Yeah. Yeah. We. Yeah. Yeah, we are. What we showed here is the last 1.5 years, which was more or less completely which completely dealt with planning, with execution planning. Yeah, of course, and that's maybe, and we had a great talk about that yesterday evening. You have to, in construction projects, you have to stop planning at some point in time and go to the execution. So that's why we, I'm glad that you brought up architects, because what the industry is heading to at the moment is more or less agile in planning, lean in execution. So you have, and there is a saying in the industry, so think slow, act fast. So take your time during the planning, get all the information, do all the iterations, do the simulations if you like, but once you hit the ground, once you hit the construction ground, you have to be ready. There is no chance that you can do big adoptions or big changes in the construction ground, because then it costs you a lot of money. Yeah? Everything else beforehand, it's cheap. Yeah?
But the important thing is they are doing it right now, right? So they have dailies in the construction ground, so with the boots on and the helmets on, they do dailies, right?
We do dailies, yes, but the principle of work is now more leaning towards a lean approach with takt planning, so it's more a process focus now than a product focus. During the planning phase, you really have a product focus with the documents, with the planning documents, with the tenders, with the, yeah.
We'll get to that later too.
Defined as a product. Yeah. Yes, no, multi-vendor. Yeah. With prototypes, you mean, or experiments? Whether we plan, whether we work a lot with experiments and prototypes. That's what I understood. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's tough to. We're talking about 270 kilometers here, so it's tough to, let's say, build a model for the entire route. What you can do, and also what we did, is we had as I said, or as we've shown, we had this one particular large-scale prototype, because there we wanted to prototype and to test some particularly difficult processes, which comes up later. What we also did was a simulation of 5 kilometers, where we used a methodology which is called rock drills. So for all you who had been through military service probably know this method. So where you actually simulate parts of the of the project with models and tools. Yeah? So we also did that. But that's still an ongoing discussion, I would say, in the industry, how to simulate, how to be as ready as possible for the construction phase. Yeah. No, these were actually also some two new introductions that we did. I would not say that it's normal and everyone is doing that. Would not say that. I mean, the impact from the rock drill was that we now have a 120 item to-do list, yeah, from all the processes that we need to improve and everything that we need to rethink. So the outcome was as expected. I mean, it's better to know it now than just to figure it out on a construction ground where it's costly.
If I may interrupt, that's an interesting point, right? So whenever, I mean, of course, this is also, I would say, an attitude that you have with engineers, and then especially German engineers, is like this kind of really to grasp everything that we have at hand. And then, you know, when the PMO is at stake also, it's like, okay, we need to make it really specific and it has to be on quality and time, whatever. But then I realized completely dysfunctional. They're not talking. They're just insisting of what needs to be done. And then I always made this hack. It's like, oh, okay, let's have a meeting. Let's invite them to. Sometimes I didn't tell them who I invited to the meeting. And then we were at the ground and make a system thinking on the dysfunctionalities, right? Yep. And it was like, why are so many frictions on the point? And then they pointed out themselves. It's like, it's because we are insisting and they are insisting and we don't have a common understanding. And that, is it really the common understanding? Actually, it's about the communication, right? And then they realized we don't talk enough. We insist on processes and tools over human interaction, right?
Mm. Questions? Further questions? Yeah, go ahead.
On the contracts that you went over quickly, they were pre-existing, and they probably had conditions, maybe penalties,
Yeah.
fixed amounts of money,
Yeah.
certain work packages, and so on. And in order to introduce an agile way of working and the trust that you built, did you renegotiate contracts or kind of say that you would leave them aside and not interpret them, but they still stand?
Yeah, second.
Enough trust, okay, so the
Yeah, the second one. So.
And the client in the contracts is 50 Hertz and the other supplier?
Yes, we are the employer, and we at the other four. Yeah, we can control our reactions to certain events in the project. Yeah.
And did you train attorneys in agility, or did you get in case the contract did get enforced through legal action?
Yeah.
Was there agile in the legal department of 50 Hertz that they understood why you were doing what you were doing?
I'm lucky that we haven't. We were not. There was no need to talk to the lawyers.
But
so
it's an
far,
interesting point
yet.
because close to that is vendor management, right? So it's and honestly, our colleague from vendor management, he was one of the most radiant kind of fans of the Agile Construction Model, and I was like, wow, really? Why? And it's like, yeah, it's great. Finally, we talking to each other, and it's like we were breaking down silos. It was like, wow, this is amazing, right? So it's at a certain point we just glimpsed this kind of amazement for certain things. As we also had blockers, right? But this was a huge factor.
And also maybe to bring this a little bit a level up for what's happening in the industry right now. I talked about so agile in planning, lean in construction already. What we also see more and more because of the timelines that we see getting more and more compressed. I mean, we all want to be carbon neutral by 2045. There's not that much time left, actually. What we see more and more in the industry is that the companies are experimenting with different contract types. So alliance contracting, for example, or integrated project execution. Yeah, so there are these movements. For me, it's not moving fast enough, to be honest. But there are at least movements in that direction. Yeah. Also contract-wise, legal-wise.
Maybe if I can say something from the experience of giving this trainings, it was funny because at the beginning, everyone was like, what are we doing here? Like, there was, like, how does it fit with our work and so on? And after, like, you remember the first questions at the beginning, it was kind of like like people was like, okay, yes, we can apply the principles in the work. We can apply a lot of this knowledge in our daily work. So that was
Yeah.
really exciting to see the transformation during the course.
I found it insane. It was like we even had test-driven design discussions with engineers, and we could apply them actually pretty well because it fits. They also have things like that, and you need to test things, right? It's amazing. So
Yeah, like
go for it.
The continuous integration part is like telling them basically if you're writing your documents in silos and then you're integrating it at the end of the sprint.
Yeah.
It's a different thing than using Google Docs or another tool where you immediately see what the other people are doing at the same time on the planning document. So that was, the parallel.
Any way that you like, you could think of sorry for the quoting example, but Git repository, very easy to kind of see the changes when people integrate new work. How does that work in document management and whatnot?
Yeah, by using a tool that everyone integrates directly in and writing it at the same time.
Collaboratively.
Yeah, you see that this bit and then you go over and then just talk.
Yeah.
You go to the other person that were writing at the same paragraph or the same section and you just, just align and talk.
Could I ask the tool that you use?
It's a beautiful tool by
So we are just locked into Microsoft World, so everything with that is available. But to be honest, thank God, meanwhile it's working relatively good. That also you can work in parallel in Microsoft Documents. Question?
I just wanted the question, could you imagine, I could imagine, but could you foresee in 5, 10 years or some period of time a kind of a 3D printing of cable creation in real time based on kind of redirecting? Can you imagine that?
Unfortunately, there comes physics into play a little bit. Yeah,
it's so complex.
we're talking. I didn't mention it before, but the cables we're talking about, these are not your small cables that you put in the wall in your house, but we're talking about this diameter, and it weighs 40 kilos per meter. Yeah, so really heavy stuff. And unfortunately, you need a certain quality in the insulation, and I don't want to go down into that rabbit hole. But there were, when we first, I don't know, 10 years ago, when we started these corridor projects, there was actually the idea of a somehow moving cable factory that is moving along the line. Yeah.
But there's interesting specs, like Wolfgang, our man for the monitoring of the cable, he has like a little wire that goes into the cable to monitor the heat, the temperature of the cable when it's under a crop. And if you fire like, what is it, kilowatt is like in 2 to 4,
amperes,
right?
Amperes, yeah.
And amperes is like, I'm always getting that wrong, it's super bad, he hates me for that. And it's like, what happened to the crops, right? Will it grow? Will it not grow?
Yeah.
It's like
a lot of
crazy.
questions around that.
Project.
But do I foresee any big changes in transmission technology that we have today, like superconducting or whatever, on a large scale? Nah. We have to stick with what we have, so overhead lines and cables for the next couple of years and decades probably. Yeah.
But in terms of, you guys are on a roll, what are the next steps for the coming 12 months in terms of
good point.
Agile and LeSS?
Yeah, the Agile and LeSS phase is, as I said, we used it for execution. We used it for execution planning. Yeah. So at the moment we are looking how to adopt this to actually the construction works on site. And so the tendency that I see today is really that we reduce the, let's say, the Agile part. Not significantly. There will be some elements that we still keep, like the dailies, like the plannings, the multi-vendor plannings that we have. Those are great. I guess we will keep them. But the daily business will be much more heading towards a pure lean approach with the lean construction principles, because as one of the partners put it, we are moving from a product perspective to a process perspective on site. And that's also what we heard today, or what we heard yesterday. No organization is permanent. So you always have to look, so what's best for the organization at that particular point in the project. And now we are on a point where we probably shift focus in the daily routines of the teams. Yeah. But still, it's up. I mean, we're just also on our way to figure that out. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, grab all your my purpose, my power sticker. If that's one last word I can give with you, it's like go to projects that do pioneer things, do cool things that have never been done before. If you want to adopt less in environments like those, this is amazing because people are so fueled up of what they were doing. This kind of vision and getting all people together, this is where less really like sparks the light. So I'd say that this was one huge point in success here.
Thank you. Enjoy your coffee. Thank you.